Our final inductee is Howard Trotzky of Bangor. By the middle of the 20th century, there was a growing realization that economic activity was despoiling the natural environment. Case in point, in 1954, a group of campers were canoeing down the Kennebec River but became stuck in a log jam that covered the water from bank to bank. The group abandoned their trip and trudged into Caratunk to call someone from camp to pick them up. The guide on that trip was Howard Trotzky. Howard Trotzky was a native of New York City, but spent summers at Camp Modin in Canaan. He eventually moved to Maine and became so fed up with logs clogging the Kennebec River, he filed suit to stop the use of the river to move and store wood. Working on a study for the state and federal governments, Trotsky concluded log drives were damaging the river ecosystems. His lawsuit, based on a 19th century statute, drew criticism that he was a radical outsider seeking to end a centuries-old Maine tradition. But Maine's Attorney General and then U.S. Attorney Peter Mills joined the suit, and in 1976, Scott Paper abandoned log drives just before the legislature banned them. Trotsky was elected to the state senate for 4 terms, which is why his name is most familiar to me. Howard was a registered guide for most of his adult life and a rafting guide on the Kennebec he helped restore. He was also a teacher for 26 years, but maybe his greatest lesson was in how citizens can recognize environmental degradation and work to stop it. Please welcome to the podium Howard Trotsky, our Maine Jewish Hall of Fame.
When you get to be 83, people don't know you anymore. Some, when they hear the name Trotsky, ask, are you related to Leon Trotsky, the Russian Marxist revolutionary? I respond, no. I was a Republican state senator back when Republicans were sane. And that Leon's real name was Lev Davidovich Bronstein. In 1950, at 10 years of age, I was sent by Pullman train to Camp Modin, a Jewish summer camp in Canaan, Maine. I had never seen a lake before. I fell in love with Maine immediately, but Friday evenings we had Shabbat services. They were held at a point of land on the shoreline with an ark containing a Torah lodged between 2 trunks of a split maple tree. The background was the solitude of the lake, a loon, and the reflection of pine, spruce, and fir trees of the shoreline on the glass surface of the lake. That was the closest to God that I could ever come, God's reflection in nature. I spent many summers at Camp Modin as a camper, waterfront director, guide, paddled the Rangeley Lakes, Belgrade Lakes, Moosehead, the Allagash, Penobscot, and the Kennebec River. I climbed many of Maine's mountains, Katahdin, Kineo, and Tumbledown. And again, I fell in love with Western Maine. I graduated Columbia College and Columbia Teachers College and followed my passion in becoming a high school chemistry and physics science teacher in Maine. I've taught in Rumford, Windham, and Jackman. Today, our state of Maine is known and loved for clean and beautiful waters. It's hard to believe that 50 years ago, some of Maine's great rivers were horribly polluted, including the Kennebec. In 1969, I enrolled at the University of Maine Cooperative Fishery Unit to earn a master's degree in fishery biology. My assignment was to determine the impact of the log drives on the aquatic insect, or the bottom water of the Kennebec River. The massive pulpwood drives left large bark deposits in the impoundment and in the gravel, adversely affecting the fisheries and the ecosystem. Miles of river were covered with pulpwood from shore to shore, obstructing navigation and in violation of a 19th century Maine statute, which is mentioned, which designated waterways as public highways open to all. In 1970, I co-founded the Kennebec Valley Conservation Association, whose purpose was the restoration and preservation of the natural resources of the northern Kennebec Valley and limiting the use of the Kennebec River for the purpose of storing and transporting pulpwood. We got nowhere talking with the large paper companies. There was only one stop left, the Maine Superior Court. After many attempts, I found an attorney. It was very hard to find an attorney, you'll see why, the companies that were involved. I found an attorney, John Lund of Augusta, to take the case. The case was Howard Trotzky of Bangor, County of Penobscot, plaintiff, versus Scott Paper, Kennebec River Pulp and Paper Company, Hudson Pulp and Paper Company, Central Maine Power Company, and Kennebec Log Driving Company, defendants. Now you've got to picture what went on here. We had a discovery hearing. There were 10 attorneys representing 5 major corporations. By those attorneys, a lot of them came from the biggest law firms in Portland. There were 10 attorneys representing 5 major corporations on one side of a long table, and John Lund and I were on the other. What was interesting is that when I was there, one of the attorneys who was representing one of the companies became the future Chief Justice of Maine. Another one became the future chairman of Maine's Republican Party. The rest is history. The log drives on the Kennebec ended in 1976, and today the Upper Kennebec River is a recreational mecca for whitewater rafting, kayaking, canoeing, camping, hiking, fishing, observing wildlife, and generates millions of dollars for Maine's economy. I wanted to stop my speech because I explained what it was like. As a biologist, when I was working there, I had to get up at 4 in the morning to get into the river before the dams opened. And I remember, you got to picture this, it's 7 o'clock, the dam was going to open. And I had a current meter on the bottom of a pole. My canoe was anchored in the river next to me, and I'm sitting there, and I knew that it was going to open, the dam. So I had sampled the bottom when the water was this high. Well, now the water starts coming up, and the propeller down there near the bottom starts turning, and it starts coming up, and I'm bracing myself, and I've got a pick pole pushing the logs away as they're coming down at me because they're all below the dam. And all of a sudden, I see the canoe starting going downriver, logs are hitting the anchor rope, and I just, it was hard. As the current comes up, just went over through the meter in the canoe, jumped in it, and ended up 7 miles downriver. But, okay. In 1974, I was elected to the Maine Senate representing Bangor and served 4 terms. Senate President Joseph Sewell of Old Town, by the way, whose close friend was Irving Kagan. They both served on the Board of Trustees of Maine Maritime Academy. Senate President Sewell of Old Town had confidence in me and appointed me the Senate Chairman of the Natural Resources Committee. I felt it was my personal responsibility as chairman to shepherd hundreds of environmental bills through the legislative process, to protect the environment and grow the economy at the same time, having endless conversations with interested parties and sitting through many long public hearings. Representative Brenneman, or Mayor Brenneman, I don't know what they call him now, but I remember Republicans and Democrats respected each other in those days, and we were colleagues. And you would have a guy get up on, there was a Senator Merrill from Portland here, and Senator Merrill would, I was speaking on something, Merrill would get up and he would tear me apart. And I thought, he was a Democrat, I was a Republican, but I thought to myself afterward, he's darn good at that. And then afterward, we'd go out for lunch. But that's what it was like. And it's a shame. Anyway, serving in the Maine Senate was a great honor for this Jewish boy from New York City, from away. It's been a good life. Teaching is a great part of it too, by the way. I'm honored and grateful to be elected into the Maine Jewish Hall of Fame. I want to thank the Board of Directors of the Maine Jewish Museum and Eitz Chaim Synagogue. Tikkun Olam, repairing or improving the world, is a core value of Judaism, and I am humbled by the contributions made by present and former inductees, making the great state of Maine a better place to be. I would like to thank individuals, living and deceased, who supported me and mentored me, and those who gave me opportunities. First, my family. Evelyn Lewin Trotzky, my wife, an elegant, beautiful, self-accomplished woman, beloved by many in the greater Bangor community. Her mother, Liesel, was on board of the St. Louis. Evie's life was tragically cut short over 20 years ago by ovarian cancer. She put up with me. Anyway, my daughter, Debbie, who's here today from Israel, with two of my granddaughters, all four of my Israeli grandchildren have or are currently serving in the Israeli Defense Forces. My son Sam and his wife Judith and son Ryan are here from New Hampshire. He's a New Hampshire physician. The other one, Rabbi William Seamers of Bangor of Congregation Beth Israel. I had to cut this speech short. I was up here trying to cut it, but I have to say this. At our community Passover Seder, we read of the tale of the four sons, the wise, the simple, the wicked, the son that doesn't know how to ask. Rabbi Seamers, who's a good judge of character, always assigns me the part of the wicked and rebellious son. Senator Joe Sewell of Old Town, the former president of the Maine Senate, had the confidence in me and appointed me Senate Chairman of the Natural Resources Committee. I also served as Chairman of the Education Committee after Senator Cates and the Energy Committee. Thanks to my fellow citizens of the city of Bangor who put their trust in me and elected me to serve 4 terms in the Senate. Attorney John Lund of Augusta, who represented me at the end of the log drives, in the suit to end the log drives, and as mentioned, John was later elected Attorney General. It was almost impossible to get an attorney to go up against these 5 companies, because most attorneys represented these companies in some way or capacity. And then to Richard Barringer, the former Commissioner of the Department of Conservation, who's been a wise, confident, and close friend. And then I was a raft guide for many years. I didn't know when I cleaned the river, when we ended the drives, I was a canoe person. I had no idea what a raft was, and there weren't too many kayaks in those days. But the other one I just want to recognize here is 2 people, Alan Haley and Wayne Hockmeyer. These were the pioneers of whitewater rafting on the Kennebec and Penobscot rivers, and they offered me the opportunity to become a registered Maine whitewater guide for Northern Outdoors. And then to Camp Moden, Mr. Bloom was the camp, Powhatan? Okay. To Camp Moden, a Jewish summer camp founded in 1922 in Canaan, Maine by Jewish educator one Libby Berkson, and directed later on for many years by Sam Catterson. So anyway, I'm very honored to be here. But there's one other honor I have to mention, because it compares with this one. I taught high school, and I love kids. And I walk around, I live in Bangor, but I was walking around Carrollton 2 miles to try to keep in shape. And I don't think this will happen to any of you guys who have the foundations or all this, this is very unique. I'm walking north on Route 201, the route to Canada, and the cars, trucks going, but all of a sudden a big pulp truck comes by and pulls up and stops. It then starts backing down the side of the road on 201, stops, and out comes one of my former students, Frankie Patton, who's a great pulp truck driver, comes across and gives me a big hug. That award, I want to say something, that award from kids as a teacher, because I loved all the kids. All these kids were my kids. And so that award, that hug was as good as this.